tired now.
Yeah, not something you want to do in the full summer.
Bye, Disney Springs. Aww. We're here, St. James. Ah, so cute. Bless you.
Yeah, my blessed.
We're exploring New Orleans. We're gonna go to Buckner Mansion.
New Orleans. New Orleans.
Okay. There's so many beads in the trees everywhere. Uh-oh. Okay, it's just the thing. I dropped the strap broke on the GoPro and it shattered. That's better. We made it. I am so happy. Look at it. But man, and here's the back. They just left it open for me. Thank you. It's my house now. Well, oh, here's my strap. I like that instead of rocks, they just have shells everywhere. I got one though, so don't worry. Cody just wanted to get in the statue, and there's a crow's foot. No. Oh no. Okay. Look at my crab cakes with crawfish.
Big ass appetizer.
I know. Oh, I'm ready. I'm gonna be eating this on the roof in New Orleans. Food.
Basic bitch.
You got your alligator po' boy.
Hold up real quick, gotta be basic.
Shut up. You're eating an alligator over here, okay? And I got my Rockefeller oysters.
Because I'm not a basic bitch.
I'm gonna make you get off through the roof.
Bye.
I got sushi. 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 We thought we were gonna walk around, so I was wearing my onesie, and now we're back, and I'm sweating.
Sashimi.
Yay! Oh. Oh, my drink. I made a drink and then didn't even. Jeez. All right. Now we can head to our ghost walking tour in New Orleans.
Cheese and rice.
Father or priest. So this is Père Antoine's alley, named in honor of the priest that devoted his entire life to the people of New Orleans and the parishioners of St. Louis Cathedral. Now, he lived 80 years old and was considered a living saint and was loved by everybody here in the city. And while a priest, he spent a lot of his time taking care of the sick, the dying, and the dead of the many yellow fever and cholera epidemic victims that were so common here in the city. Unfortunately, most of the work he did was last rites and burials. After he died, his presence was so strong here that his ghost, his spirit, remained on site, has been seen walking the garden behind the St. Louis Cathedral and along this alleyway named in his honor. And some of the eyewitness accounts of his presence here is people will report walking through this alleyway and stumbling on these uneven pavers. And as they're about to fall, someone catches them. They look around and there's nobody there. And they know it is the ghost, the spirit of Père Antoine that is there to catch them and prevent them from falling and hurting themselves. Unfortunately, he only works in this alley, so any place else in the French Quarter, you're on your own. Building right here with the flags, which dates back to the 1830s and was then known as the Orleans Ballroom, and was at that time a place for young people to meet, gather, socialize, dance, and enjoy themselves, and was as such until the Civil War, at which time it shut down like many things did during the time of Union occupancy of the city, but reopened after the war, still known as the Orleans Ballroom, but then became the site for our famous Octroon balls. And Octroon was a young lady who was 1/8 black, very beautiful, but because she was of mixed race, could not marry anybody who was white, but did not prevent Octroons from meeting men here to have a fling. So this was a site primarily for married men to find a mistress. So it was a bit of immoral activity that went on for many years here at the Orleans Ballroom. Well, there was a African-American nun by the name of Henriette DeLille that was incensed about this very improper behavior going on, and she wanted to put a stop to it, so she was able to collect enough funds, buy the ballroom, shut it down, and convert it into a convent, which then became one of the nation's first African-American Catholic convents, and was as such at this location until the 1950s, at which time Bourbon Street had evolved into what it is today, and by then the nuns realized it wasn't going away, and this was no longer a good environment to have a convent along Bourbon Street, which was then also a school as well, so there were children around. So the Sisters of the Holy Family, as were known, found some property on the eastern edge of the city, built a brand new convent, moved out there, and they're still at that location today, where most of the hauntings are associated with, including the sighting of a young man seen walking the lobby wearing a Confederate uniform. At the same time, people will see a young lady in a Confederate-era dress also walking the lobby, where these images will pass one another. They fade in the walls and disappear, reappear. But people hear her saying the same line over and over again of, "I can't find him." And those are the spirits of two lovers that met here before the war, and they promised they'd meet here again at the Orleans Ballroom after the war, get married, and spend the rest of their lives together. Pirates Alley, named in honor or in reference to the many pirates that have been through the city walls. And the reason it's called Pirates Alley is that this is the path the pirates would take in the early years of the city when they were bringing their stolen goods from the Mississippi River into the city. And the reason the pirates used this particular path, this alleyway right here, was because it was sanctuary. It's a very, very special spot right here. And both of y'all being from dry climates, and this massive two-story structure at the corner over here, which also dates back to the 1790s, built after the two fires, by a wealthy Creole by the name of Pierre Jourdain, who built this as his private home, which was his pride and joy. Well, Pierre had been living here about 15 years, and one night he was in a poker game, and he bet this house in that poker game and lost it. Being distraught over losing the most important thing in his life, that night he goes upstairs to his second-floor bedroom, puts a gun to his head, and kills himself. Well, the ghost of Pierre Jourdain continues to haunt this property to this day. When Muriel's moved in here's a restaurant about 25 years ago, they already knew about the legend of the ghost of Pierre in his former home, but the management had to find out on their own just how haunted was it. Well, they found out very soon after the restaurant opened as a business, when at night, when they would close, if they did not set a table of food and drink, bread and wine for the ghost of Pierre, when they would arrive in the morning, they would find something broken. Dishes, glassware, a bottle of liquor, or a bottle of wine. But when they would set the table for them at night, everything was fine, or at least nothing was broken. But if they didn't, they would arrive in the morning and find, for example, that glasses had been thrown across a room over 30 feet and shattered against a brick wall. Well, the management got tired of having to clean up the shards of glass every morning and losing good bottles of liquor, so being a restaurant, they determined that they would set a table of food and drink for the ghost of Pierre. He would not break things. This information was shared with me by management, along with the fact that they will get frequent reports from their guests while sitting at their tables, dining, eating. They report the sensation of something or someone is underneath the table because they feel a leg or foot will be touched or grabbed at or kicked, where in fact there is nothing underneath the table, but they associate that with the antics of the ghost of Pierre. All right, we have one photo opportunity right over here. In the next room, behind that brick wall with the window and the open door, the lit chandelier, there's a table with the wine list on that. That is the ghost table as set by the staff of murals for the ghost of Pierre Jourdain. Every few weeks, not that often, I wish he would appear more, but every few weeks his ghost will appear at that table. In front of, alongside, behind, sometimes seated, mostly standing, sometimes quite distinct or blurry, but he will appear every few weeks at that table. So that is the ghost table of Pierre Jourdain. Hotel and the haunted hotel, which is haunted by ghosts of Confederate soldiers. And the reason for that is that this hotel, which extends from this 4-story warehouse at the corner all the way to this corner, almost is full block as well, almost 100 hotel rooms, sits on the side of this block right here where once stood a hospital during the American Civil War. And as you well know, the Civil War was a very brutal and tragic war in American history, of which a lot of the soldiers died from infection, which today would not be considered life-threatening. Medical procedures at that time were very basic to barbaric, to where, as for an example, if a soldier was on the battlefield and got a hand injury and sent to this hospital to recover from that hand injury, the most common way to remediate that was to cut the hand off. So most of these operations that were performed here to save lives were actually amputations. There was no anesthesia at that time, so a shot of whiskey was about the only thing that was used to help alleviate that pain. But if you're losing a limb, an entire bottle of whiskey is not going to be enough to end that type of suffering. Medicines did not exist either at that time like they do today, so a very common material that was used to help heal wounds was cornmeal. Doctors would apply a cornmeal-based dressing to their wounds to help them heal. Unfortunately, at this hospital at that time, there were problems with rats. And rats would climb on the soldiers and needed the cornmeal dressings on their wounds. To help eliminate this problem and to entertain the soldiers that were recovering here, the hospital staff would issue them rifles to shoot at the rats. But sometimes they would miss the rats and hit other soldiers, adding to the multitude of tragedies and horrors that occurred here, which makes this one of the most haunted hotels here in the French Quarter. Guests that have stayed here have reported that when the doors to the elevators open on the second floor, they see the scene of an operating room with doctors and nurses in Civil War era garb operating on soldiers. One of the more common reports from guests that stay here report that when they check into their rooms for the first time, unlock their hotel doors, and enter, they hear the sounds of moans and screams of pain coming from their rooms. And there's been other reports as well from the guests and the staff about the bed linens, the sheets, the towels. Stains will appear on them that look like blood that will appear and then disappear. So it is unfortunate that most of these hauntings associated with this particular hotel are somewhat gruesome, and as a result of that, the management of the Provincial has chosen not to advertise about being haunted. So you could be visiting a business or staying at a hotel that is indeed haunted that you may not know about unless something unusual happens to you. Property, which was originally built as a private home, is 4 stories tall. About 20 hotel rooms today, very fine courtyard in the back. It was very common years ago, because of high mortality rates, that couples would have lots and lots of children to guarantee the longevity of the family from generation to generation. So this couple that lived in this home had 7 children. It was a family of 9 that lived here. People in New Orleans would collect rainwater in these large barrels that were on that property, known as cisterns, and they would use this rainwater for drinking, cooking, bathing, cleaning. Sometimes this water was weeks to months old, obviously stagnant, full of bacteria, but people did not associate the conditions with drinking dirty water with getting sick. In fact, doctors at that time believed that a cure for cholera was to give them more fluids, which was usually more of the same dirty water, which made the conditions worse. And as you were approaching death, your joints and muscles would stiffen so you could no longer move but were still alive. So another way of looking at that is that rigor mortis was set in before death. So with that, as it turns out, this family of 9 sit down to dinner one evening and several days go by. Neighbors get concerned for their safety because they see no one from this large family entering or leaving the home. Someone is chosen to force their way into the house to check on the family, and when they do, they go into the dining area, find the entire family of 9 all sitting around the dinner table, all in their formal clothing, but all stiff as a board and dead from cholera. They apparently had consumed the same contaminated water and the advanced stages of that disease had taken over them during their extended mealtime to where they could no longer move, but were still alive, and they were forced to watch each and every family member die around them at the dinner table and could do nothing to save themselves or their loved ones. And that's how they were found, and that entire family haunts this hotel today. When you die, ghosts take on the age of the time of death, and because there were children that died, this goes to children that roam the halls of this hotel. So there's reports of childish activity that goes on. And one of the more common reports from guests report being in the hotel room, and they'll get a knock at the door. A few seconds later, the guests in the next room will get a knock at the door. A few seconds after that, the guests in the next room will get a knock at the door. Like a little kid going down the hallway, knocking on the door, then run the next room and knocking the door, then run the next room and knocking the door, then running and hiding. Now, if you were staying at this hotel and that happened to you, you might be a little bit annoyed, but you could probably put up with it. But the more disturbing reports of the hauntings of this hotel involve the parents, because guests are reported being in their hotel rooms in the middle of the night, in their beds, sound asleep, will awaken, open their eyes, and see the image of a woman, a foot with a face. It's the mother checking on her children and her guest. Usually at that time, the hotel guests will let out a scream, be fully awake, and the image will disappear. Other reports of guests being in the hotel rooms, middle of the night, in their beds, sound asleep, will awaken, open their eyes, and see the image of a woman sitting on the edge of the bed or the chair right next to the bed. More reports of guests being in the hotel rooms, middle of the night, in their beds, sound asleep, will awaken, open their eyes, and see the image of a man, again, a foot with a face. It's the father, and he too is checking on his children. Turtle.
Turtle. Alright. Hi, Turtle Bar. I'm very excited for the next place. Very, very excited. It's the sealed window. Right there. The sealed window. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
This is where every tour group comes by here on normal days. It was built in the late 1820s and was acquired by Dr. LaLaurie in the early 1830s. Therefore, this property is commonly known as the LaLaurie Mansion. Spelling of his name is LaLaurie. French pronunciation would be LaLaurie, but I'll be using the Americanized sounding name of LaLaurie. And Dr. Louis LaLaurie was a prominent, successful, popular, well-respected, well-liked physician here in New Orleans. He lived here with his wife Delphine, who was a socialite, did fundraisers, charity events, and entertained in this house on a regular basis, weekly, throwing these very lavish parties with fine food and drink and live entertainment for the elite society of New Orleans, who were her guests, and she would also wear these very expensive clothing to show her guests as well. So a very popular spot for these parties which she would have basically almost on a weekly basis. So a very well-liked, well-respected couple. So people thought. They were also the wealthiest couple in New Orleans at that time. Well, in 1834, there's a fire at this house, and the firemen are called to put out the fire. They arrive, make their way inside, and as they go from room to room throughout the entire house to check on the damage from the fire, make sure that it's out, the firemen start coming upon the slaves of the LaLauries throughout the house. Many they find were dead, others deformed, some maimed, some missing body parts or limbs, and still more they found in chains or in shackles or in cages through various rooms and closets throughout the house. Because what was going on in here is Dr. LaLaurie and his wife as a team were performing gruesome medical experiments on all their slaves. This is 1834. Slavery was legal here in the city. However, we did have some simple laws on the books protecting the needs of the slaves, of which the #1 law stated that slave owners were not to mistreat their slaves in any way. And for the most part, everybody upheld those laws to the point that a mob ensued to get after the LaLauries, and this mob included other slave owners who were just horrified at what they heard was going on in his home. Well, the mob converged on the property to get after the LaLauries, who were able to get in their carriage and escape, leaving their 2 teenage daughters behind, who had to be rescued by neighbors and taken away to safety. Well, the LaLauries get away. Some they believe he may have fled to France. Nobody really knows what happened to him, but they were never caught or prosecuted for their crimes, so they got away with murder. Another example of a short-term owner of the LaLaurie Mansion across the street from us is Nicolas Cage. Nicolas Cage buys his property in 2007 for $3.5 million, knowing the novelty of this being the haunted house in New Orleans. A lot of celebrities have come here to work. A lot of them have bought property. Nicolas Cage is just one of many celebrities that does own property across the city, but he, being who he is, decides he wants to buy the haunted house in New Orleans. Well, he makes his purchase, moves his possessions in, but the first night he's here with his family, they get so unnerved by the sounds of chains rattling, moans, doors opening and closing, moans, screams all throughout the house, to the point that they don't want to spend another night here again. So he owns his house for 2.5 years, but only spends one night here. And in the time frame that Nicolas Cage owned the LaLaurie Mansion, he does not and cannot pay the mortgage or the property taxes on it, and eventually the bank seizes it from him and he loses it. The historians have done a lot of research here. They know for a fact it was Delphine LaLaurie, the wife, that was mainly responsible for these experiments. They also believe that in the 3 years they lived here, they may have been responsible for as many as 100 deaths. Nobody really knows how many slaves died at the hands of the doctor and his wife. There's a TV show on the FX channel called American Horror Stories. The third season that ran in 2014 is known as The Coven, and that season was inspired by this Chamber of Horrors across the street from us, with the life of Delphine LaLaurie being portrayed by Kathy Bates. I take it you saw the show.
Yeah.
Filming was going on in 2014 and was released at the end of that year. People were traveling to New Orleans by the hundreds for several years after that to take these type tours, to see this one property, to hear this one particular story about that. It's such a fun. Were you here then?
No, that's why
No,
she's here now.
she's here now.
That's
Because of that
exactly
stuff.
why
Okay,
she's
well,
here
that
now.
happened. Okay, well, American Horror Stories, The Coven, was inspired by the true events that happened to this house you're looking at right now. This tour, it's me more personal, I've chosen not to go into graphic details of these experiments. However, I have to give you a couple of milder examples of these experiments, just to give an idea how sick the doctor and his wife were, what the authorities found and had to deal with. The LaLauries took one of his slaves, broke his arm right here, bent it at a 45-degree angle, put it in a cast and let it heal at that weird angle. Broke his forearm, bent it at the opposite 45-degree angle, put it in a cast, let it heal at that strange angle. Did the same thing to his other arm, same thing to both legs. When the firemen found this poor guy, he was still very much alive, but could only crawl on the ground like a crab, because his distorted limbs is referred to and known as the crab man. Also in various forms, they would cut them open, take the internal organs and stitch them to the outside of the body to see how well they could live or function. And that's enough of that. That's mine. On the right, 2 stories, you get a full view of this absolutely magnificent home, which I want no part of because I have enough bad luck in my life. He didn't do this, so he paid his maintenance staff on that, though. But this is the front door.
Oh my gosh! Ah!
Behind all this is where they had all the stuff.
It's all lit up in there, though. Gonna explore a little bit before we leave New Orleans. Oh my god. It's cold. I just want to find some more gifts for people. Huge on beers. Are you happy with your beer? Yeah. There's actually, oh.
Yeah,
It's just,
9 to 3.
well, it's closed. He can see over and hold it this up. I'm too short, I can't see anything. But we're gonna walk around it.
Just go like this, you know.
Whee! Are you gonna lift me up? Thank you. Oh, I guess that's why I think someone broke it. Like, people were standing on it too much.
No,
Well, I
that's
could
clearly
see on
cut.
the end.
Yeah, that's clearly cut. Just stand.
And oh yeah. Oh yes.
Yeah, because like the process of a huge one.
It's closed. You have to stand on things to try to see stuff. Someone lost their tote bag, which is the same one I got earlier. Cody's just up here checking out the cemeteries.
Hanging out.
Because they're the two famous ones. The St. Louis and the... What's the other one?
Huh?
What are they? The St. Louis and the...
St. Louis and then...
Oh man, I forgot. So here's where it separates.
Lafayette.
Yeah, that's it.
St. Louis and then Lafayette.
There we go.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Dallas. Time to try some gator jerky. Cajun style. Well, it tastes pretty normal.
Well, it's a alligator with beef.
Yeah. The Cajun part you taste is spicy, but
Yeah, definitely taste because it's starting to get spicier and spicier.